Hello and welcome to another episode of Today in Space. I'm your host, Alex Giarfanos, and on this week we have another installment of The People of Science, where I get to talk down with actual human beings, which is equally important given the times and how crazy things are. This week, finally, after so long and many failed attempts on my end to talk with her on the show, we're finally here. One of the original Space Pants Squad members, if I'm not incorrect. Julia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Alex. I'm really excited about this.
Like I said, it's been a long time coming. So let's there's a ton that we have to break down and talk about. But first, tell the people a little bit about yourself, your passions, what got you into science, and let's start there.
Okay. Well, to start off, my name is Juleah Kaliski. I am a graphic designer, and I do content creation of mostly sharing about science and astronomy related topics. I try and stay localized around astronomy because I can go all over the place. But so I have my own company. It's Juleah Kaliski Designs. I am a graphic designer. I do freelance work. I also have my own line of clothing. I try and have I'm very passionate about creating designs and stuff that people can relate to and feel empowered, and they feel inspired to be themselves and proud of who they are, whether that's being a complete and total nerd and a little bit of discovering who you are as a person. And then I also try and do a lot of sharing with other people to get other people excited about science, to try and look at it a different way. It's not so boring as a lot of times things are viewed as.
Oh, and this is why I think, when we first met online through Twitter, through this crazy thing called the Space Pants Squad, which was a bunch of people that were up late one night trying to see a rocket launch, wearing literal space pants. We're kind of a kindred spirit in that regard, where it's like we're both creative folks that are trying to spread science and show that it's not just that boring thing. And like you were on YouTube before I was, and you've been putting out content for a really long time. I've been enjoying it for as long as we've been putting it out. This shirt that I'm wearing here is one of your designs. This was one of I actually got this as a Christmas present for somebody this year, so thank you.
Nice.
Yeah. So, what's one of your earliest memories? Because obviously science is a huge passion for you, and you can see it in your artwork and your designs, and your background. If anyone's watching on YouTube here, you've got a ton of space stuff, and I love it. Your telescope in the back. You do some astronomy too, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I
do. Tell me about
that.
What got you into that?
Okay, well, when you asked one of my earliest memories, and I think that
yes.
there was I was thinking through this, and there's a few key moments for me when I was really young that kind of inspired me to go in this direction. When I was really little, when I'm saying 5 and under, my mom would always, whenever there'd be a storm or any kind of nature related weather or sky, we'd always get in. We had a station wagon. We'd pile in pillows and blankets and drive out to this field, whatever field we could find, and climb on the top of the car. And so I remember laying and looking at the stars a lot as a little kid, and just telling stories or listening to stories, and that really got me intrigued about the night sky and everything. So when I started doing a little bit of research on my own, as little as I actually was super intrigued by this. And a lot of people were surprised by me at how young I actually was into science, how much I was actually intrigued by it. And so when I was little, I always wanted to be, when people would ask this little girl, what do you want to be when you grow up? I had all these different scientists that I want to be an entomologist. I want to be an astronomer. I want to be an astronaut. And so that's where it kind of started. But for me, I think the next really big moment that started this journey for me was I remember in elementary there was a different school that they had an observatory, and they had it open for a night because I believe it's every 25 years Saturn's rings are either horizontal or vertical, and at that time it was vertical. So they opened it up so the public, they could come and look through the telescope. And it was the first time I ever had like looked through a telescope at that like size and volume. And I remember just like being frozen, like utterly, utterly shocked as this little, I think I was 12 at that time. And I just like would look at the sky through like the split in the ceiling and then look back in the telescope. And I was just completely shocked. Like that's what we were looking at. And at that moment, like that changed so much. I remember going to the library the next day and like taking this huge stack of books. I was just completely mesmerized by this idea. And that was like a huge turning point for me. There's a bunch of stuff that influenced me growing up. My great uncle was a subcontractor for NASA, so he always talked about it on the phone when I'd call him his stories and stuff like that. So there was a lot of influences when I was growing up, but it was just a passion that I had. Like it always just drove me to, it really intrigued me. And it just like everywhere. And it was funny is like going back to Twitter was like a huge influence. Like I think I was 11 or 12 around that same time I made a Twitter account, and I remember like back then they weren't called NASA socials, they were called tweet ups, NASA tweet up. And for STS 135 I remember like I had my own laptop. It was the first laptop I had, and I was super excited. I remember the website and everything, and they started live streaming the final mission for the shuttle program. And it was just like, I was just at that point getting kind of exposed to the space programs and everything and the idea of it. So I was like coincided, and they started streaming it live, and I was just, same time I made Twitter, and I was like, they would interview people on the stream, like, who showed up for the event. And so I just started tweeting it live, and that's when I actually, like, that event, and I think it was like the week that I got a Twitter account, was I met a lot of the people who were in the Space Pants Squad. Like, and it's really funny, like, Jason Major was one of the first people I followed on Twitter, because they were like all these people. Rochelle was in there, and so like we've been talking that whole time, and it's so weird how long like I've known these people and everyone in the group, because it's like this whole evolution. And so it's funny because the NASA social at the time was structured very differently, and so like they had a wiki page at the time for everyone who was attending each event, and somehow like I wrote to them saying like, hey, I'm doing live coverage, this little 12-year-old me saying like I'm doing live coverage on Twitter, and so they listed me on the event listing even though I wasn't there. And it was like very different, like, and the community was really small, and it was just this odd, the way that it was done was this weird connection that I had never seen because of online and computers and everything. I was so young. But I think that was like kind of my journey, if you were to summarize it super small, like how I got to here. And
yeah, to have you tell, I didn't even know how early in the game you were in this. Yeah, those early tweet up days, it's like a whole nother era.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. And a few years after that was the first NASA social that I had gone to when it had become NASA social. It was the New Horizons mission. And that for me was a huge jumping point in solidifying where I am today, right? And kind of my path through this, like having the chance to be on a NASA like TV thing asking questions was just, I was like, oh my God, this is real. Like I can't believe we're here. It just blew my mind that and you say 12, dude, with this stuff with NASA, like it really, it's a special thing. Like there's no other way to kind of explain that. That's crazy. And now, I mean, you've been our curator for the Space Pants Squad thread for a while, and that was one of the crazy things that it's this giant thread on Twitter where we just keep posting in that same thread, and like everyone that's attached to that thread gets, as soon as it lights up, there's so many notifications, and your phone blows up all day, to the point where we were like breaking the thread in Twitter because it's not built for that. Like that's
Yeah, it was
Threads.
funny because like it's been at least I know it's been over a year. I think it's close to 2 years now. The thread's been officially going, maybe over two
Mm.
years. I'd have to look because I was trying to scroll back, but because there's so
I
many
found
different, I'm
a
like, there's
tweet.
no.
I found Thread 5.0, which is one of the ones you put up from 2017. So that's three
Oh my
years
God.
almost.
Okay,
That from
okay.
5.0. So I don't even know.
And then, yeah, it's crazy how much it's built. Like, if you were
Mm.
to think of it, trying to describe it, there's a bunch of
Please.
like armchair astronomers is a good way that I like to say it. People who just are like really fascinated about the subject, all the way to those who have degrees in astronomy. So there's a huge span of different kinds of people. We all kind of had the same interests. There's a SpaceX launch. It was one of the, I believe it was one of the Falcon 9s. And I could not tell you which mission it was, but obviously several years ago. We were all kind of
Yeah.
having a conversation, waiting. If I remember right, like there was a lag on the feed, and it was just one of those where you're waiting for the stream to start, and everyone was just kind of chatting on Twitter. And there was, I remember this GIF about Elon getting stuck in his car or something. And anyways, it was this whole thing, and we all just started tagging each other so that we could all have the conversation. And
Mm.
at that time, this was when like Twitter had a very small amount of characters that you could use, and
Yeah.
you
The
at
140?
names were yes, no,
Yeah.
120, I believe it was 120.
120.
Um,
Oh my God.
at usernames like handles counted in that. So I remember replying and having a text file on my phone with everyone's username, and when you did a tweet, you had to then like reply to that tweet with broken out everyone's username and every single because and it just was to keep everyone together in the same conversation. And so now that things have developed, I believe there's like either 50 or 60 people in that thread now on Twitter. And
Hmm.
we all just kind of, when events happen, we'll all kind of get on there and talk about what our thoughts are, or when there's something controversial or a new scientific discovery or stuff, we'll kind of post a link and we'll all kind of debate and talk about it. Um, someone started because we're all on that, trying to get back on the topic. We're all on the waiting for the launch to happen. There was someone in the member who has made some joke about their neighbors must have think they were crazy because they were out in like their sweatpants with their phone
Yeah.
in the middle of the night in this weird alley trying to get a photo
It
and of the launch, and we
was
all started
Keith. I think it
cracking.
was Keith.
Yes, it was
Yeah.
Keith. We all started cracking jokes about like, oh, this the space pants. You even got your sweatpants on. I think like several of us the next time went and actually got sweatpants on the next launch, and it's just like kind of like this like community spirit that makes everyone feel really
Yes.
connected.
Yeah, and back in the day, back in that era, it was really about like having people get on and talk about their excitement about the launch. Because at that time, there wasn't a ton going on. Like it was as far as what the space program is now. Like it was,
Yeah.
there were things going on, but it's changed so much since I remember joining, and like we were always having conversations of like where we thought it would go, and man, it's been cool too because like some people have kind of, you and I have been putting out content, I think, for as long as we've been on there, but there's been other people who have joined in and they share their artwork and they share their music. I mean, there's so many, and there's streamers, there's gamers, there's it's such a cool combination of different people that just love space. I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
how I would describe it. Yeah.
We have people from all over the world who are in there. I know we
Yeah.
have the US, we have England, we have Latvia, we have Spain, we have India, we have France, we have Germany. I don't even know. Like, those are just the ones off the top of my
Yeah.
head, but there's all these different countries who are in it.
Yeah, and you were the original, you created our logo, technically, right?
Yeah, yes, I did.
Yeah,
Everyone
and
was
that was
kind of
cool.
like saying like, well, what kind of image can we cause use? And the whole like they even had meetups in Southern
Hmm.
California, and they all kind of wanted like, well, what kind of team spirit thing can we all like join together and have? And I'm like, well, I can put something together. I'm a graphic designer. Kind of throw in some ideas. I remember doing some sketches, uploading photos to Twitter, and seeing like having people vote what kind of theme did they
Yeah,
like, and so it was
that
like
was
a
fun.
team thing. Everyone kind of built it, and so yeah, Space Pants
And here
Squad
we are,
represent.
Spaceman Squad
Yeah.
forever. Oh man. Well, that's really cool. I didn't know how deep your love of science went. I think that's very cool. I had a very similar experience. I had a science teacher who would every this was elementary school. He would bring one of those inflatable um, observatories into our gymnasium, and so we were able to see
Okay.
the stars. We were able to learn from that. And I think he did it every 2 years. He didn't do it every year, but he brought a full scale telescope that allowed us to see Saturn too. And it was one of those things where we would always joke that it was like it was a sticker on the end of the lens, and you were like, "This, no, what? This is crazy." Um, yeah, and man, that's so crazy. What? You talk about your business and that you're trying to make your own with your own art. I think that's awesome. We have our own thing here with AG3D. We 3D print stuff. We're doing a lot for the show. Me, it's more
Hmm.
of an R&D lab to kind of just do things and have a practical side of testing things. For you, how has that experience been starting your own business, and what has it done for you as an artist, for your creativity, and how are things going with it, especially nowadays with coronavirus and all that stuff?
Yeah, totally. Actually, the funny thing is, like, the first. Well, let me back it up a little bit. Uh, I've always been creative, and drawing and everything. I've been drawing for years, and everything that you see, I think a big thing, especially when it comes to, like, I think you'll relate to this, when people look at your end product of things that you're like currently making, and you're like, this is, especially when it's something that you're really proud of, you're like, this is actually like next level. I feel really good about the quality that it's coming out at. A lot of times people look at it and they'll see like be amazed, but they don't see like the journey behind it, how many
Mm,
literal years it's taken for you to get there. So it's like this process for me is like beyond the business, but like the skill wise of like the things that I'm drawing currently, my artwork has literally taken years. It's like, and I think it's a thing that people are appreciating more and more. And it's, I see a more exposure to it. Like when I draw something, like things that you're wearing or I'm wearing, this is something I literally made by hand. Like this is, I drew these, this took hours to do. And so like when it comes to the business side of it, like I took a lot of time to get there and a lot of self-confidence because this is like something, a product of like something you created as a human being, as an expression of myself. And so I remember like I've always really had like after a certain age I really was into like style and fashion, very aware of like what I was wearing and wanted to look a certain way. And these two things kind of tie together of my
mm,
mission statement of everything. And being a very nerdy growing up as a girl, a young girl, to a teenage girl, to now a woman, like there was always a lot of like lashback about that. And I
mm.
think that's kind of where my current style is. Kind of like I don't really care anymore. This is who I am. And I grabbed kind of growing up there was that. And I was always like the only girl in groups, the only girl in Ubuntu class, the only girl in the obligatory. And so like in all the clubs, and I remember like my friends in school, we would like go to their house and they'd play D&D and I'd be building robots, and it was like, but it was always like with the guy gang. And so like it was very much influenced, and so, and I never really like fit in with the girl squads of stuff because there wasn't a lot of exposure to that when I was growing up. As much as there is now, I see a lot of it like environments that make girls feel more welcome to be feminine and like have these interests. And so it was growing up, I used artwork as an outlet to kind of express myself when I didn't have a lot of people to talk to about it. And so then I started doing a lot of science related artwork. And I had a science teacher in junior high who she would give me extra credit for doing illustrations. So I would like come to school like extra credit. Sure, I'll draw a poster. So like that's kind of like those things tied in. I started illustrating all of the different like scientific terms and everything, and so it was just my passion. So then when it came to like creating, um, I like what's funny is I love graphic t-shirts. And so I would always, when I go shopping, I did a little bit of sewing for myself. I'd alter stuff. And then, but I'd always end up buying in the men's section because there was never anything that really interested me when it came to styles or graphic tees, especially when I was younger. And so, like, a lot of the stuff I wore was actually men's, and I'd alter it, or I'd just buy, like, boys, and it was super tiny. A lot of the clothes that I wear now are like that, except for mine. And it's because it's hard to find something that actually expresses like your own interest in graphic tees. And so like I think that crossing like for me, clothing doesn't really matter like what gender it's put in a store because I've shopped like that so much. And so it's just a matter of like how do you feel in it and how does it fit you? Do you like it? Do you feel like it expresses yourself? So when I started drawing, bringing it back to the Spacepan Squad, the first design I ever made, I was super nervous. I made an online store. I remember the first thing I made, I uploaded it to the squad and said, what do you guys think? And I think it was like some cat drawing. And everyone was like super supportive.
I think I remember that. Oh my God.
And I was just like,
feels like so long ago.
It was. And so like that was the first. It was like a concept idea. I want to see how people responded to the idea of it. And so I saw a lot of people because I kind of felt comfortable in that environment of the Spacepan Squad. That I'm like, these guys, we have the same interests. I don't feel like people judge here. Everyone was super supportive. So then I kind of took that and started honing it into what I wanted my designs to be. And where I'm at right now is like, now I do have my own, I had a website for myself for, I think I've had a website since I was 11. And it's funny because I did that WordPress where it's not the WordPress that it is now. Like this was different. This was a different game. So I have like a website for my company now and my artwork and I produce a lot of stuff. I do one-of-a-kind work. I also mostly sell the apparel. And a huge thing behind it for me is like a validation as an artist, seeing people like every single time I see someone who wears my work, it blows me away. Like seeing that expression that other people like relate and can identify this as like, this is who I am. And it's, for me, it's more than just like making clothes that you feel good in. Like this is a statement, especially for people who are really expressive about themselves and astronomy and space and aviation or whatever kind of form of science that they really enjoy. Like, because there isn't a lot of representation, I think, for us. There's a lot of representation for gamers and people who like comics. But when it comes to science end of it, you're seeing more of like the NASA marketing come out, which is amazing. But there's a lot more to it than just like NASA as a brand. And so for me, it's a huge part of self-expression of like, because I had that growing up, like there wasn't a lot of ways for me as a woman to express myself. So I really wanted to make something that I feel confident in, other people can feel confident in. You can wear it and not feel like a complete, total doopy nerd. And you actually feel like you're really cool looking. Like that's what I want. That's the goal. And I think I'm getting there, at least.
I would say you're there. I mean, I love this Pluto shirt. I've fallen in love with, because for me, and I hope you appreciate this. What this means for me is when I'm wearing this is so back in the New Horizons mission, I went for my first NASA social. That was a crazy thing, and I just had to do something creative to get it out, because I'm sure you're very much the same way, where you need your creativity. It's like a therapeutic. It helps you in your journey where you're going, right? So I had a weird time with when Pluto was demoted, was no longer a planet, right? It was very complicated. So I made a song that was very Eminem, Marshall Mathers ish, where I just was very confused. Or a lot of people were getting really upset about Pluto being changed, when all really what they were trying to do was, classify it better. But it came across kind of like I didn't like people that didn't think that Pluto was a planet, which is not the case. I actually love Pluto so much that I think we should see it for what it is, which is this beautiful system in itself. And that's what I love about what you've done with this one, where it's almost like Pluto is blossoming through the cold, dark depths of the third zone of our planetary system. So I love it. I think you do some great work. And that's very cool that your combination of the art and the science is really cool, man. I for me it's the mic, for you it's your art. You've captured your own flair with it. And your website, where can people find your work? Where would you point them to?
Well, if you want to find a localized place, because I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to social media, go to juleahkaliski.designs. That's the URL. That's my website. And you'll find everything there. You'll find my one-of-a-kind products. You'll see my apparel line. You'll see my streams and my online video content and stuff like that there. So juleahkaliski.designs is the easiest way to find all of the stuff that I do make.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have a few questions for you. Let's rattle a few of them off here. What was your favorite class in school growing up? I have a feeling I know what it is after talking to you for a little bit, but let's start there.
Yes, I loved science and I loved art. Those are my two favorite. I struggled in school growing up. It was really hard. And so finding really so
Yes,
it's a lot
yes.
of people looked at me and they're like, you should be doing amazing. And it was hard. So it was finding something that I actually loved to do was what kept me excited about the agonizing pain.
Interesting, so this is something that I really want to talk about, because I think there's a lot of people who could find themselves in science that have a hard time in school and then don't get into it because of that. So, or find out super, super late. So I'm interested because for what did it for me, so just give you context of my background. I did well in public school, but that was because our program, we were a year away from being not accredited by the state. So I wouldn't say that we had the best science or math program. Luckily we did, and people's diplomas still counted for the state, but that's a whole other thing. When I went to college, I was really unprepared, just not prepared at all, and actually snowflaked one term, so I didn't pass any class. So I had a very hard time, and what I found out, it was just my learning style. First, I didn't have the skills on how to take a test. It's just not how my brain worked, or was defaulted to, I should say. And I found out that I was much more of a hands-on person, right? You're saying you're sewing. For me, it's like the act of a 3D printer. That's why I feel like I have a lot of time on that, is because I get it. It's tactile. I can get this. I've always been hands-on building things. Does that sound about right to you? Because for me, if I was passionate about it, I did really great in it. But if I didn't absolutely love the class, I had a very, very hard time doing it.
I agree with this. My journey is it's funny, while you're talking, I was debating whether I'm going to say this or not, but why not? I don't tell a lot of people because it's hard. You get a lot of social pressure, but I'm extremely dyslexic and very hyperactive. So that's what I was struggled with, is the structure of schools. I was homeschooled most of my life. And so I had a little bit more freedom when it came to my learning style. I did public school for a time in junior high and high school. And I have to say, the teachers, I had my math teacher and my science teacher. But my math teacher, I struggled. I hated it. I literally hated math, because it is conceptually and visually, I cannot see it. So it was so frustrating when I'd see other kids being able to do so well, and I wanted to do well. And I tried hard. This wasn't a lack of, and after a while, it's just you have no motivation to try something that you fail at continually. Sure. And she took the time. She showed up. She stayed an hour after school every day. She made sure that I was there every lunch. I was there I could show up an hour early before a test to ask her questions. Like she was amazing. So like in that sense of like for me, that's why it was super hard. I had to overcome the fact that it was really hard for me, especially in public school, to
Mm,
learn, take all these, because when you are, those who are dyslexic, they'll understand there's a lot of physical tricks. You're very a tactile person. There's a lot of physical things that you have to do that's obviously visually different than everyone else. And so it was really hard for me when learning in that sense. But it did come in because of hyperactive. If I'm super interested in something, I stick with it because this is inspiring. This is something I can move forward in. I actually understand it. I can do
right.
this.
Yeah.
And so that's, yeah, that was a huge thing for me. And for me, I think I find the more people I talk to about this, that someone who has a higher intelligence, like you have, it's harder for you. Things are easy to learn conceptually.
Mm,
And so once you figure it out before you even do the project, you're like, I don't even want to try this. I know I know what it's going to be. That's the follow through.
yeah.
The is really,
Yeah.
really, really hard. You have to learn follow through, and I still struggle with that. I'll see a project, I figure it out in my brain, it's done. I don't need to finish it, you know. So
Yeah.
so it's funny to see. It seems like you're relating to this, and
Oh, totally.
there's a lot of people I've talked to who have this. And so, yeah, it was hard. No one thought that I was ever going to do anything science related.
Hmm.
But, like, this is something that I'm passionate about. And so it doesn't, I would highly say to anyone, especially someone who's younger, who would watch this, if you are, like, struggling, that doesn't disqualify you from your passions.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that just because you feel inadequate at something doesn't mean that you are. If you're struggling in something, especially a subject, it doesn't, or other people say that, oh, you're incapable of doing this, I'm way better at it. That doesn't mean that it isn't made for you. And that's something it's hard when the rest of the world is telling you something different. But it just is what it is, especially when you're like someone, and I would say especially the young girls. There is a lot of, it's hard, and there's more, like I said, there's more exposure to it, but it's a lot of peer pressure of like, you are the only girl showing up to these things, and that's totally fine. I don't think it like makes you less feminine. I don't think it makes you less of a person because your interests are different than your friends. And it takes a while though to understand that as a human in your brain.
Sure. No. Thank you so much for sharing that. First, I'm amazed at. I struggled with that for a long time, especially when I started having a lot of hard times in college. And I find, I got caught up, as I think we all do, of, the structure, just like a scientific equation. If you try and solve a problem under certain conditions and it keeps failing, you can either keep failing at it or you can change the conditions to allow for it to succeed. So I think what you've done, what I figured out eventually, and I think we're always doing this. I mean, it's constant flux, right? We're never. We get to a point where I think that's why we have the art is to push through that, to get through that, because you're in this certain form, and then you get to a certain place, and you got to start all over again. Okay, well, let's do this over.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in both of your cases, both um, with how your learning style met with the learning system and the structure that they were trying to put you through that you didn't compute. And I get that. I mean, I went into um, aerospace engineering. I tried to funnel myself into that career, and I was not good in that structure. I was not good, and I learned a lot from it. It's given me the structure to do what I'm doing here, but no, and I've tried to work in those fields. It doesn't fit with me, and I that's a so again, thank you so much for sharing what you've shared, because this is what I'm trying to share with other people, is that it's okay. Like, and there are other options out there. Like, I may not be a great aerospace engineer, but I'm a good communicator, and that's the thing that I'm going to try and spread. For you, yeah, okay. you weren't, the way that math is done it's taught on a regular page to students doesn't fit you, but that doesn't mean that you're not, an entrepreneur and an artist and can and spread your communication and your style to other people and help other people feel better. And even, I mean, the, the courage that you've had to keep going down your pursuits and not giving up on your dreams just because you were the only girl or the only woman doing it, like that is because you changed the conditions, right? You didn't say, oh, well, the test is, the experiment is this, I guess I'm not going to do this. You changed the conditions. That's the beauty of, I think, hope the message that we put out here for people is you can change the conditions of that experiment and make it work the way that you want it to. If that experiment is life, if that experiment is school or whatever it is, you have the ability to do that. It just takes determination, and you really, I guess in our case, really have to love it to have that perseverance to go through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is.
I'd say that, like, for me, I was super fortunate because I was homeschooled. Most of my education, early education, is that, like, I grew up in a home that my mom was super supportive in me, so I never saw it like my interest is weird. So, like, when I was young, it was just like very encouraged, like, oh, you want to be a scientist, or you really are interested in like different topics. It was just thrown in front of me. And so then when I started, I think, going out into different communities and different like groups and clubs and classes and stuff, I didn't really see it as like something like, when I should say, like, the fact of like me signing up for like computer programming classes or stuff like that, like that was just something I wanted to do, so I did it. And then when I showed up, I was like, I'm the only girl here. Like, it was just like, yeah. So it was like that sense of it. I never had like a damper on what I should or shouldn't be. And I'm like super fortunate that, like, it's always been a super supportive and like, be who you are. Like, this is who you are. Awesome. There's no constraints of who you're supposed to be. It was just a lot of self-confidence of, after I started stepping out into it, like, believing in myself to continue. You are capable. You are able to do these things.
Oh, that's great. No, and I think that's a huge thing. And I think if there's anyone out there that doesn't have that right now, I think a lot of people, I see this now because I had a similar, luckily it's different, but I had parents that definitely were very supportive of my passions. I mean, obviously, going to be a rocket scientist, they'd have to be, right? But that helped me a little bit for what I'm doing, and it allowed me to even here to do this podcast when I was kind of at my lowest, right? And a lot of people don't have that support in their daily life. And I think what would be, I don't know, do you have any advice for anybody who's in that scenario? That is kind of on the edge of like, hey, I have my passion, but I'm worried that people won't think I'm good enough, because it's something I'm sure you struggle with it as well. You have to, your self-confidence is a constant moving, fluid thing. It's not there's always something else. You're like, oh, I didn't realize that was a problem too. So with that, what kind of advice do you have for the people out there?
I would say this, as millennial or as Generation Y as this sounds, but 100% turn to the internet. I would say that there's like that's the world we live in right now. I have found more friends and community than online that I have had a personal relationship with, like a personal connection. We have things that I didn't even know other people had the same amount of interest that I do on an online community than I was exposed to in like the real IRL. Like this is it was a huge thing for me. And it took a while for me to feel okay with that, because like a lot of people gave you the pressure of like, that's not real, that's not something you're hiding from the world. And I think there's a point that you have to make a decision to believe in yourself even when you don't. You have to have that amount of commitment to yourself and the people around you, that this is something that I'm worth it. Like it doesn't matter what other people say. and that can apply to anything when it comes to like being who you are in a fashion sense, when it comes to being in education or any amount of interest. Like there were times that I completely doubted myself, like completely. I had no self-confidence, but I just stuck to, I know Julia a month ago or probably 5 years from now would want me to do this. And I
Mm.
would just keep going. And so it was really hard. But I would say there's an online community for you. If you don't have it in your like in your community, in your family, in your friend circle, I that's what I would do. I highly suggest that. There's forums, there's amazing groups who are super supportive and everyone there is like weirdly enough, I feel like it's less judgmental. I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, online is super judgmental." Yeah, it is. You have your trolls, you have your haters, you have your bots, you have all that stuff. But there's also an amazing community out there. I would say believing in yourself, and I would say that finding something that you feel good with, whether it's uh, what's the word is like when you have like a moral base. Like, what is your code?
Mm.
What is your line that what's important to you? This took me forever to figure out, and I'm still figuring that out. But like, because life comes at you in all these different angles, especially when you're younger, figuring out like what is it relationships? Is that your number one? Like, because that can be extremely important for you in your life, having actual connected relationships? Is it your education? Is it your passions? Is it outcome? Are you a goal oriented person? I need to finish this. Are you a discovery person that you like to explore things? Like once you find that, you have a baseline to hold you through all of the things that come at you. Because then you'll be like, well, I have this process. This is how I can get through it. Or I like this goal. Or these people are super important to me. So that's why I'm making this decision. If you can I would say if you don't have a support system, if you can find a little bit of solid ground in those different ways, that's a huge. Those are the things that helped me through a lot.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's great. Um, One of the things that I thought of as you were saying that was something I've been working on this last year is perspective of the people on the other side because I call myself a lazy perfectionist, or I was a lazy perfectionist, where if I couldn't get it done the way that I had it in my head, I wouldn't do it because it didn't seem worth it. So that was me before this podcast. And one of the things that was keeping me back, really, because that's what I would tell myself, but really what was going on is I was worried about what other people thought. And now that that's not a problem anymore, but it's less of a problem because, especially from like the haters and the trolls and stuff like that, because I've started to, it's a guy I follow online, Gary Vaynerchuk.
Mm-hmm.
He's really good. Well, he's at least gotten through it in my stubborn head. Um, he mentioned something that it's those people that are having a bad day, well, they're having a bad day. That's why they're reaching out to you. They're scared. They are fearful about something. They're having, and so you, having perspective of like, okay, I have empathy for the fact that you're not feeling well just because I put something out online and you're shitting on it. Like, okay, like sorry you're having a bad day, like, and so instead of me thinking like, oh my god, this is bad work, and focusing on what do, like you said, your code, what do I think is good enough, what do I think is a good representation of where I am that week, um, that's and if you're comfortable with that, you put it up, it gets what it gets, it
Mm-hmm.
reaches the people, and you know I've tried to to monetize and do this stuff. But honestly, this podcast is here for me to talk to people and to communicate. If one day it does, great. If not, this is a weirdly therapeutic thing for me too. So yeah, it's really comes down to why are you doing it, right?
Yeah.
You're doing it. Well, I'll talk to myself and then I'll ask you what you're doing it for. But I think you've already said it. For me, I'm doing this because I love science. I love communicating it, and I think if I can get one more person to get involved, and who knows? I mean, some of the greatest minds were not people. Einstein was a patent clerk. All these different people who didn't have anything or just made a crazy contribution because they had a different way of thinking. I mean, that's if we can do that, that's awesome. So,
Yeah.
but you for you, what would you say?
I'd say partially what you said, like the whole science communication is, I love sharing my love for things with other people. I just have always done that. I always like to teach. And so that's a huge part of it. If I could see one person, I love astronomy. So if I can see some person look up at the sky differently, like that moment when you see it in their eyes or their perspective, it clicks. They're like, there's something different that kind of shocks them.
Mm.
That's what drives me forward. I love seeing that. Also, a form of self-expression, like I said, like I think feeling, if there's a way that I can help other people feel confident in themselves, I, if I can give that to somebody, I would love to do that. And I think it's for me an outlet of both stresses, and it's like you said, call it a therapeutic, strangely therapeutic way. Like if I can stay busy, I am so much better. I
Oh
am not a
man.
good bored person.
Mm-mm.
So
Mm-mm. Same here.
yeah. So
Oh man.
yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. One last thing I want to ask. We've kind of been talking about space for a long time online. Right now, what are you most excited for with the space industry and where space is? Like, if we had to go, I guess, the next year and the next 5 years, what are you excited for that you see happening right now?
Uh oh my God.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's so many moving parts in the space industry. It's hard to like
Mm,
narrow it down. But um, I'm a huge okay. I'm super excited about James Webb. I that you we don't what's amazing about space is you don't necessarily know what you're going to explore. So
mm,
there's things that we know that we've made James Webb for, uh, and things we're going to photograph, things we have calibrated things for. But when we launched Hubble, there was things that they literally had no idea that were like they came back and they're like, holy, yeah, this is amazing, and and so this I that I'm excited about. Like we don't even know necessarily what we're gonna see with James Webb. That's gonna be absolutely amazing. Um, I think so. That's one part of it. I'm super excited about that. If you were to, the direction we're going to in Mars and exploration, that's super vague. But
mm,
there's so many different companies and countries who are targeting different ways of doing that. I think it's a collective idea that I'm excited about. You could talk about all the rovers and the the helicopter and all these different projects that are being put forward. But I think collectively, the data that we're getting back as a whole, like all of these different missions and the planetary scientists, people who are looking at topographical things, all of this, all of the collective data that we're getting,
mm.
this is like teaching us a lot about the planet. Uh, there's so many different viewpoints and approaches of how we should explore Mars. Should we go to Mars? All this different stuff. But I think it's just that's the whole part of humanity, though, is having contradicting points of view because
Mm.
you can argue and debate things. A lot of times it comes forward with answers you would have never seen before. So that's that's why I'm saying like the collective data that we're getting from that is really exciting and all the different missions. I'm super excited about SLS. I don't know when that's gonna happen
I know.
because that keeps getting put back, but I think SLS is something to look forward to. Really recently, I'm excited about the with Boeing and SpaceX, and they're doing the God, I missed the name, but it's
Commercial crew.
yes, thank you, Commercial
You
Crew.
got it.
That's gonna be super cool. Uh, oh, I'd say the projects we have for the moon, I think we should continue that. I mean, that's
Hmm.
not something we should turn away from. that I think there's a lot to be explored there scientifically, whether we're going to set a base there or not. But I think there's a lot of scientific research that can be done by going to the moon. Um, yeah, that's really broad because you could go
No,
super
that's
deep
great. We
with all
can
that.
go deep. You're right. But
Trying
no,
to
it's
keep.
that's great. I think for you know we've kind of been flip-flopping back and forth. Luckily, we haven't with this new administration, but we've been flip-flopping back and forth between the idea of going to just the moon or going to just Mars. And there's this possibility on the edge of using both as a platform for the other, and that's what
Yeah,
I'm really excited for. Like there's enough funding for right now, so that's great.
yeah.
More than we've gotten in the momentum has continued, I should say, which is really really nice, and we haven't stopped the program to start completely over, um,
Ah,
which is which is crazy because that's happened a few times in both our
yeah.
lifetimes. Um, but yeah,
I think
it's go ahead.
I think another thing I left out, but like I'm a huge fan of Musk's work, SpaceX. That's just me. There's a lot of again controversy
Hmm.
about that, but I'm a huge fan of the concept of the things he's doing. A lot of times you don't necessarily agree with everything that everyone decides to do, but it's like
Sure.
one of the front runners that are pushing so many things forward. The concept of what he has, I think, is like a platform that is something that's actually viable, and that is building a base in orbit. Which
Mm-hmm.
obviously we have the space station and everything, but for like there's no way to create spaceflight ready ships that can do the long haul ships that we need to be doing on
Right.
in our atmosphere. There's no way to do that. So the concept of building a structure in space, in orbit, or on the moon, different ways. I know this is way far fetched, but I think where
Hmm.
his goal is something that we need to be doing. However, that works itself out. But like we build
Right.
things in space because there's like structurally and with physics and everything, there's no way to do it at the scale that we need to. So
Hmm.
that's the long haul thing that I'm super excited about.
Yeah, and you've got him, you've got Jeff Bezos, you've got I mean, there's plenty. You've got Rocket Lab, you've got all these different companies that are this explosion of the space industry right now around the world is crazy. And oh yeah, where we end up, I don't know, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun for us to kind of share the word and spread that out. So, Julia, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a lot of fun.
I'm really glad you had me. I've wanted to do this for a while. I'm super excited.
Yeah,
This
man.
is good.
Yeah, we've got demo two, so the first launch from America with American astronauts on an American rocket, potentially at the end of May here. And yeah, if that goes through, we'll have to get back on and talk about that because I'm sure both of us will have. I'm already feeling the need to either pull out a sketch pad or make some music or do something because it's there's we're at the cusp of the next era here. I could feel it, and hopefully we can reconnect then, and we'll stay in touch online. But I'd
Yeah.
love to have you back on after that.
I'd love to be back on. It'd be fun.
Awesome, awesome. Julia, thank you so much. Do you have any last words for the folks out there, the people who are right on the edge of getting involved in science? I think you've said it pretty wonderfully already, but
I would say if I were to summarize it down, one thing I would want to add that I haven't said is that like if you are slightly interested, but you're like, "Ah, I don't have this passion that I'm seeing everyone like you and I talked about. We had this passion that had us persevere through all these struggles that we had. Uh, let's say you don't have that. It's this side thing that you're like, oh, this is super cool. This kind of interesting. I want to read some blogs about this. Maybe I'll get some updates on my Twitter. It's just like something that slightly you're interested in. That doesn't discount. That doesn't discount like what it is to you. Like this is something that you like. If you want to make a blog about it, just have your own perspective. You might not be a graduated scientist from this. If you just want to have your own input, that's the amazing thing about the internet and the world we live in. You can have your voice. You can have what you want to say. I think that there's going to be people who listen to it, whether your community and crowd is small, to large. It always gives another viewpoint, like I was saying. Having like that debate and different thoughts is a really big part of the community. I'd say if you are someone who is super passionate, but you're like, God, I'm really busy. I have a job, or I'm in school, or my parents won't take me serious. This is ridiculous. I want to make YouTube videos about computers or something, and nobody's going to like this. I would say that, like, it's not necessarily whether other people are going to like it or validate you for it. I think it's, like you've said, it's a self-expression. If this brings you a passion, a joy, if you want to share this with somebody, I think you are very capable of this. Everyone is 100% more capable than they feel like they are. And I think no matter what is coming against you, there's a lot of things that you can hold on to and just plow through it. So on either ends of the spectrum, if you do have that passion drive, but you're just very insecure and you're just not sure, or it's just a pastime, either one, like this, I think having science exposure is really important. And it gives a lot to life. And not to be long-winded, but I want to add one more thing, and that is from my side, like I'm passionate about art. That's what I do. I would say art is a huge part of me that keeps me who I am. Like that's number one for me, is creativity and releasing that and expressing myself. So that's you, and you also like science. Like nobody says those things go together. Like those two, and it clashes a lot. The concepts and the rules and everything, it completely contradicts each other. But for me, I kind of have this thing of philosophy in my own perspective, and there's like these 4 pillars in humanity that's keeping humanity kind of on a path. And that is like the concepts of art, philosophy, religion, and science. And those things have kept humanity sane. I think if you take any one of those pillars out, you could not survive a community. If you were, think of it as spaceflight, if you were in solidarity, like solitude, you have a crew of 60 to 150 people. You are doing a mission. If you removed any one of those 4 pillars, you would psychologically, emotionally, socially, these things start falling apart. If you only live with science and theology, you don't have art, you don't have music, you don't have ballet, you don't have classics, you don't have books, you don't have all of these things. There's no way as humans for us to express ourselves. Reverse it though, if you only live on theology and whims of art, when you have no science and the structures that religion gives people, like, so that's where I'm at. Like, you can't, there's literally some people, a lot of scientists disgrade art, saying, this makes no sense. You can put a Kleenex on a pedestal and it's modern art, and, all this stuff. And I've heard that so many times, and it's like, there's so much more to it. There's a lot of science behind the psychology of why art is important. So if you are someone who likes to draw, make music, dance, make videos, skateboarding, any form of self-expression, these are just as important as art. And then combining the two helps people see things differently. Like we were saying, we interpret, we learn things differently than a lot of other people structurally do. A lot of science is structured in a way that's written in textbooks, and it's very dry. If there's a way that we can mix things up, make things easier to swallow, makes things more enjoyable, help people follow through if you have that passion, but you don't have that stick-to-itiveness to follow if something isn't interesting. This helps. Your podcast helps. People's YouTube videos help. People's paintings, music, a lot of different science communication. That's what we're here for. So I think combining the two is extremely important in the community.
Oh, strong close, Julia. I love that. I could agree with you more. I love that 4-pillar idea. All right, tell the folks where they can find you online. Last bit, where can they find you on social media, and to tell us where they can find your wonderful artwork.
Okay, so my social media is the same on everything. I'm pretty much everywhere. I've been around online communities forever, so if you have a social media, look me up. I'm probably there. It's going to be Juleah Kaliski. It's just my name, super simple. It's spelled funny. Juleah, Juleah Kaliski, Kaliski. So if you have a handle, a username, it's going to be at Juleah Kaliski. My website, Juleah Kaliski Designs, is juleahkaliski.design. And you'll see my artwork there. You'll see my apparel line and my social media there.
Thank you again, Julia, for coming on the show. We really appreciate having you on. That's another example of one of the people of science, one of the expansive, diverse of the people that are actually involved. They're out there. There's a place here for you. Again, Julia, thank you. See you, folks. Spread love, spread science. Be good out there. Stay safe.